Hey there, and welcome back to the second episode of our podcast, The Climate Glitch. My name is Sharvari.
And my name is Shreya, and we're the hosts.
On today's episode, we're going to talk about the dangers of greenwashing and companies that use these misleading techniques. Honestly, I didn't even know what greenwashing was until this year, and once I did, it was crazy how many companies actually greenwash.
For me, I actually started looking into greenwashing or actually reading articles about it after visiting Kohls. So Kohls is like a supermarket giant in Australia, and it's basically on every corner. It's very high on consumerism because it sells so many products. And essentially they say they green market in a sense, which means that they have eco-friendly advertisements and they don't use plastic bags. But essentially it's a facade of greenwashing because they spend so much time, effort, and energy pushing their products to be eco-friendly rather than actually making them eco-friendly. So I read that in mid 2018, they banned single-use plastic bags and charged 15 cents to buy even thicker reusable plastic bags. So that's just being non-eco-friendly with extra steps. And it seems to be environmentally sustainable just because they have eco-friendly advertisements.
Exactly. I find it really ridiculous that they traded plastic out for plastic and they didn't even bother taking off other single use products off their shelves. That's a really good example. And greenwashing is basically just when companies and businesses claim that they or their products are eco friendly to make themselves seem sustainable when they're really not. And some don't even try to lower their environmental impact, and they focus their time and resources on marketing instead of actually changing their designs. I mean, the green movement has been growing for a while now, and people are becoming more aware of their shopping habits, of course, right? The whole consumerist habit is kind of changing, or we're trying to make it change. And so companies want to use marketing strategies that match with what's on their customers' minds to increase their profits. And so to do this, some of them use tricky language or labels to mislead you, or some of them just straight out use false information to trick you into thinking that they're eco-friendly. There's a shop that I used to use for all my clothes, and I'm sure you shop there too. It's called H&M, and it's really popular amongst me and my friends. And because it's trendy, it's branded clothes, but sadly H&M is also greenwashed. They came out with a new collection last year, and it's called Conscious Collection. And it got a lot of praise on social media and by a lot of magazines and things. What they did is that they claimed that their materials are sustainably sourced and that they're recycled and it's very eco-friendly and sustainable. But there are a few problems with that. They greenwashed. So the first thing is that information on each garment wasn't even available. They didn't even write anywhere how natural or how recycled something is. The information was just insufficient. And things like how is it being manufactured, how are their plants being run, all that stuff matters because it's not just the end product that has to be sustainable, it's how you make it. In the end, that could just make more of a carbon footprint than what the actual product is.
That's true. And also when you talk about greenwashing, it also has a ripple effect on consumerism. Because in a sense, now that we know about greenwashing, a lot of consumers actively seek out eco-friendly products. And what they end up finding is not products that are greenwashed, but they're not the best alternative either. So there's these companies who don't pretend to greenwash or just say that, oh, we use plastic in our clothes. And people find that better than having greenwashed clothes. But that's just a more harsher alternative, which is why greenwashing is really toxic for shoppers. So that's where green marketing comes in. There's a massive difference between greenwashing and green marketing. So a lot of claims are backed by industry recognized certificates and government backed standards, which is important to officiate whatever they're selling. And so if they're open and transparent with the way they operate and have a lot of information online about this, which is stamped and government approved, then yes, that counts as green marketing. But with greenwashing, it's mostly eco-friendly advertisements. A great example of green marketing is when it's the process of marketing products based on environmental benefits. And so there's the Body Shop, and it's a very large franchise. And their whole advert is based on the fact that they understand what their customers prioritize and provide a product that fits their demand. So they have a campaign called Enrich, Not exploit, where they use funds that they garnered through this campaign to plant trees or to contribute to eco-friendly committees. All of their products, in a sense, are vegan or are directly like plant-based and not coming from more toxic materials like plastic or other metals that you usually find in like shampoos and stuff. So that was a really good example of green marketing, and they're very transparent about it, which is why they still have so many loyal customers. And as Shrew said, H&M is a really great example of greenwashing, and it's also sad about like H&M because it's cheap, which is why a lot of people still use it, even if it's greenwashed and not really sustainable.
Yeah, exactly. But I love the Body Shop. That is a great store.
Yeah, exactly. And they're sustainable and vegan, so it's like, what more do you want?
Okay, so we talked a lot about what greenwashing is, but how do you actually start steering yourself away from it? The first thing that I would look out for, and I find the easiest thing to do, is just to dig a little bit, try to find some evidence that backs the company's claims. If they're actually sustainable, it shouldn't be hard to find. You can check their websites, their about page, the product descriptions. If they're really sustainable, the information will be easy to access. They would want people to know about it. The information that they give shouldn't be vague. It should be specific and it should be authentic. If it's not those things, then it's most probable the company is not green. I think all the other red flags of greenwashing also kind of just stem out from that. So if a company uses fancy language with no meaning, like eco-friendly, it's really vague and it doesn't have a proper definition. Or if they use labels that don't need to be certified, if they're not fact-checked or run by some kind of organization. Also, if only the end product is green. For example, they're using an alternative material, like instead of leather, they're using something that's more sustainable, but the process of making that product is still harmful, then it's very greenwashed because they're trying to promote the product itself, but we're not seeing all the harm they're doing behind the scenes. Something that's a little harder, but it's still helpful to see which companies are actually greenwashed, is looking at their company values. If they're fast fashion, or if they have a lot of labor workers that work for less money, or if they're known only for their profits, they're probably not green. And lastly, packaging it's a big red flag, because if it's single use or plastic, or if it has pictures with trees, but it's actually bad packaging, like plastic water bottles that say, oh, this water is completely, from hills and it's really organic, and on the plastic bottle they put pictures of green trees, that's greenwashed. But most importantly, I think you just have to be a conscious shopper. To do these things, it'll take 15 minutes maybe.
Yeah, definitely. And also, I think an important perspective to consider is that when you're talking about the intersectional youth and talking about different socioeconomic classes and races that come with it, obviously, green wash clothes are usually very cheap. Not just in India, but in many developed countries, stores like H&M garner a huge profit because they're way cheaper than other brands, and still manage to turn out a huge profit just because they're trendy, or they stay on top of fashion, which is something people need to be cognizant about. And obviously, we can't blame people for buying clothes from here just because they're cost effective. We get people have budgets, and you need to be cognizant of your own economics and how much you can spend on clothes, which is why it's important for intersectional youth to care about even something that may seem as shallow as clothes, because unless proper legislation and policies are enacted which help curb greenwashing, it won't help unless there's actual legislative action or lawsuits taken against these companies. For example, in Australia, they had a lawsuit against Kohls, and it's still underway. But basically, the lawsuit asked to remove single-use packaging from the Kohl branded products, and to remove single-use plastic products like straws, cups from their shelves altogether. And that's the kind of action we need in a lot of countries to even curb greenwashing to the slightest.
Sure. Exactly. And greenwashing doesn't have to be just clothes, you know, it can be any kind of product. It can be clothing brands, supermarkets, car companies, household cleaning supplies. You won't believe how many cleaning supplies actually promote themselves to have organic chemicals or safe chemicals, but it's not backed up with evidence.
And it's also, like, as you said, it's not just clothes. And I was digging around a bit and I found Nestle has a lot of greenwash products. Like the sustainable cocoa beans that many people use for hot chocolate is actually very greenwashed. And there was a lawsuit against Nestle last year because they allegedly said that they use sustainably sourced cocoa beans when it's actually like harvested with like machines that require a lot of fuel or
Oh.
like plastic containers, um, which is extremely toxic to the environment. And not to mention, a lot of the packaging is done by migrant workers who aren't paid enough. So again, that's a very gray area.
Yeah, I don't think people realize how much really goes on behind the production process of these companies. To conclude, it's important to be aware of what kinds of companies and brands you buy your products from, especially the ones that you use in your day to day lives.
It's also important for companies to be biodegradable. So make sure that you look at the labels or the information provided on the products and the clothes to ensure that minimal plastic and water is used in their production. And also make sure that whatever company you're using is ethical in terms of labor laws as well.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on The Climate Glitch, where we'll be debunking all the myths behind veganism.